Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone that has joined us today. Um, my name is Ismail Nawala. I'm the CEO of IoTap. We're based out of the DC metro area. I'm planning to go for about 30 to 45 minutes today. And I also have Yusuf Khatri, our CTO, with me, my partner in crime for this presentation. And if you have any questions, if you don't mind holding off till the end of the presentation, we will cover them at the end. And this session is being recorded, so if you're unwilling or unable to be part of the recording, please drop off. All right, moving on. Our agenda for today, we'll talk a little bit about the fish model and what subscription and recurring revenue does to companies in terms of transformation and changing business models. We have an update for you on the modern commerce platform that Microsoft has been talking about now for a while, and what that means in terms of the Azure Plan and the impact on your resale margin and what we call the partner earned credits. And then I have some updates on Work 365 as well. All right. So getting to my first topic of the agenda. So Satya Nadella received the Business Person of the Year award from Fortune magazine for 2019. We've all seen the rise of the Microsoft stock, its dominance in the cloud and product and service space. And for all of us that know the history, this wasn't the case for many years, right? Microsoft was stuck in a slump. The revenue was not growing. There was a lackluster performance all around. Cloud sales were actually not even part of the metric that the sales team at Microsoft cared about, even as far back as 2012. Now, around 4 to 5 years, that started to change. 4 to 5 years ago, that started to change. Even Microsoft, being the giant that it is, kind of went through that fish model. So I have the fish model up here on this slide. As you can see the chart above, it shows the trajectory of the cost and the revenue of any business as you transition the business model into a recurring revenue model. The revenue seems to decline and the costs continue to compound initially during that transformation stage, right? The reason this is happening is that on the subscription side, anything that you do with recurring revenue, recurring billing, happens through some sort of scale, and the product and service engineering that requires a significant investment to basically go through that customer acquisition phase. Eventually, there's a crossover and life starts to look better. How long that takes could be quarters, could be even years sometimes. The point of this is not to talk about Microsoft or Satya Nadella, but really that this model applies to everyone, not just software technology companies, not big or small companies. So a big part of our future growth is going to come from digital subscription models, actually in all industries, and they require some short-term investment and restructuring. This transformation took time. It had its challenges. And Microsoft actually offers a blueprint for all of us. And this is what we are referring to now as Microsoft. And this is what I'm referring to really as what Microsoft and Satya Nadella have done, which is swallowing the fish, right? So for those of you that may be new to Work 365, I'd like to just give you a quick introduction. Work 365 is a subscription management and billing automation application that helps you scale your recurring revenue with a focus primarily around recurring revenue and subscription management, right? Subscription-based revenue. Work 365 is built entirely on Dynamics 365 as a native application. So you're able to use all of the CRM capabilities, including the sales management and other applications like customer service and PSA to track your time. So Work 365 helps your sales team sell more efficiently, I think, and your finance team really collect cash faster, right? The idea is you can go from quote to cash quickly. Work 365 includes service components like the subscription management, billing automation, payments, and self-service, all on the Dynamics application platform. So I've covered this in the past, but I want to take another look at this. So we'll do our sessions hopefully in the next 3 to 6 months to kind of continue to reiterate some of these points because I believe they're really important. So we've looked at this and thought about what are some of the key criteria and aspects of building a successful recurring subscription business. It's really hard to talk about all of them in any one session. So the way we're approaching this is to pick a few topics, maybe 1 or 2 topics in some of these sessions and talk about them. And so today, what I'm going to focus on really is these 2 aspects. How do you bill with accurate and intuitive invoices? And I'll talk a little bit about that later. And item number 7, which is measuring customer metrics. We covered this item a little bit last month when we talked about other applications like Click Dimensions that help you nurture relationships and build your lead and sales pipeline. So these are all part of the application. These are all critical aspects of how you want to run and manage a successful recurring business. Okay, now before we get into those topics, we'd like to share a quick update with you on the modern commerce platform that is part of all the Microsoft conversations in the CSP landscape. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Yusuf, who is our CTO. Yusuf, are you there? You want to?
Hi, Ismail. Can you hear
yourself?
me well?
Yep, you sound good.
All right. Hi, everyone. So yeah, we've everyone's, I guess, by now heard of, if you're in this ecosystem, I'm sure you've heard of the modern commerce platform. One of the key questions is, why is it called modern commerce and just not just commerce, right? There's a little bit of history behind this. I mean, Microsoft, when they started doing Office 365, they were using their current systems, which was built for the legacy, the volume license business, right? And at that point, they just kind of started using those systems, and they were able to do some things with it, and some things were very difficult. Again, there's a little bit of that story there. Eventually, what they've done is now they've revamped that backend system, or rather, they're starting to revamp that backend system. And that backend system is called the modern commerce. And with that new platform comes new rules of engagement, comes new capabilities. And I guess this is going to be a very short refresher on what some of those things are. There is another aspect to this, which is the Azure Plan. Now, there is, I've seen people being confused between what is modern commerce and what is the Azure Plan. Think of modern commerce as an overarching platform, and Azure Plan being one of the offerings in that platform. Currently, Azure Plan is the only offering under the modern commerce platform, but over time, this will start to include Office 365 and Dynamics 365 SKUs also will come under the same platform. That is the direction in which they're heading, and any new major investments are being made only in this platform. So this is, it is quite paramount that in the way it's moving forward. Now, what are some of the changes, and how does this impact, you as the partner? The first thing to note with the commerce platform in general is that billing dates are now going to be calendar month aligned. So if you jump onto the new modern commerce bandwagon, then your billing dates, your invoices will actually be from the first of the month till the end of the month, as opposed to what they are right now. Depends on your when you actually sign the agreement. So that's going to shift to a calendar month period. Microsoft will give you your invoices. They have committed to an SLA that your invoices will be available to you by the 8th of the following month. So that's good. I mean, there's some predictability, that promise of predictability there. The next change, and I think this is a little crucial, is that Microsoft will now publish their pricing only in USD. And they're going to publish their FX rates on a monthly basis. This will be published a couple of days before the start of the month. So every month they'll publish the rates for the following month, and that during that period of that month, that rate will be fixed. So I'll repeat that. So the pricing is going to be in USD, but the invoice that they issue will be in the customer's currency. not the partner's currency, but the customer's currency. So folks that are in Europe will have an impact on this, especially if you're kind of dealing with multiple, have customers that have different currencies. So that would be, and then you will be affected by those currency fluctuations on a regular basis. Our advice, and we've been thinking about this, and we're also in the process of getting the customer agreement signed and so on and so forth. I think one of the more prudent things to do right now would be to actually incorporate this currency ramification into any new agreements or any new contracts that you're signing with the customer. I think that's just the most frictionless approach to take as of date. So those were kind of the modern commerce platform capabilities. This is going to happen in general as other products roll into modern commerce. This will remain constant, right? This is the approach that Microsoft will take. Talking about Azure Plan, like I said, it's one of the first offerings under the modern commerce platform. Partners can choose to switch customers over to the Azure Plan, or they can continue to with their legacy subscriptions as they are doing right now. That is a choice that Microsoft has given partners. It is as of today, there is no mandate to move anyone over to the Azure Plan. However, if you do plan to switch, I've listed some points on the screen that I would like for you to just take a moment to review those points. Of a special mention is the partner earn credit for managed services, or PEC as Microsoft calls it. What this is going to be a fundamental change in the way you earn, you sell Azure, and this is only applicable for Azure right now. When you switch over to the Azure Plan, you no longer get an upfront discount. Currently, you get a 15% discount on whatever the list price is from Microsoft for any Azure consumption. You no longer get that. Microsoft will bill you for the full price. However, on the invoice that you get, depending on certain criteria, and I'll talk about what those criteria are, depending on those criteria, Microsoft will give you credit on your invoice. So there is that fundamental sort of paradigm shift here, that you need to think about how you want to account for that difference. Whereas you were initially getting the upfront, your cost was lower, now your cost is higher, but you are getting a rebate. So something to think about there. How do you get this now? The partner earned credit is will only come to you. You'll only get the partner earned credit if you are actively engaged in servicing the customer. And what does that mean? From Microsoft's perspective, if you have delegated administration rights, or you have admin access to their environment, either through delegated admin, through Lighthouse, through there are a couple of other mechanisms. But if you have a delegated admin access to that subscription, Microsoft deems that you are managing their services, and only then will you get that partner on credit. So something to keep in mind and watch out for when you do switch that. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers the modern commerce and the Azure Plan. Ismail, I think that covers it up.
Okay, thanks, Yusuf. Yeah, so the important thing to keep in mind is just because you sell an Azure Plan doesn't mean you're going to get to make money on it, right? And we are basically in the process of gathering feedback and looking at the need and demand for this. So actually, in fact, the next slide I have is a poll, and I'm going to quickly share this poll. If you don't mind responding to this, I would highly appreciate it. This will give us an idea on what the interest level is on the Azure Plan and the modern commerce, so that we can then start to prioritize what we have to do on our end to build things out. So I'm seeing that some folks are actually selling it now, which is exciting. Okay, I will give it another 30 seconds. We're about 50% of the votes in. If you don't mind quickly responding to that, that'd be great. All right, almost there. Okay, I'll in fact share this poll so we can see what is actually happening here. Just one moment, please. Yes, it looks like about a third of you are already selling now, and I'm Very excited to hear that. So we'd love to talk to you a little bit more about how you're doing that, and reach back out after this this meeting. Okay, great. Now, moving on here. Hopefully you can, I'm back to my presentation and you can see my slides here. The other thing is the customer agreements. Last year, Microsoft enforced what they call the Microsoft Cloud Agreement. That was absolutely required for you to transact in the cloud. Work 365 was compliant with that. The cloud agreement could be signed and synced back into the application. And now we have a new agreement. The agreement has been made available. The template's out there. There's a few nuances around this agreement. It's supposed to be one agreement per customer. It is still customer specific. And the enforcement date, as we know it right now, is going to be February 1st of 2020. So, you know, you want to start getting ready with that. And the way this really works in the application is pretty straightforward. It's the way it's been, we've been able to leverage what we had already to make it work. So this is, what I'm doing here is just showing you a typical flow for what happens during a sales cycle. You sell something, you're going to want that customer to accept that relationship, the reseller relationship. You may provision a tenant for them, then you'll sync it back into Work 365. You may set up a billing relationship, or you actually will have to set up a billing relationship, and then set up all the services and subscriptions for them. So let's take a look at the simple flow in terms of how Work 365 handles this. I'm showing you here a Dynamics CRM system, and this is a customer account called, customer name is Cycle Shop. Notice that there's a colorful Work 365 icon on the account ribbon. I drop that down and I see this menu. In the menu, I have an option to provision the account. Now, I'll just show you some of the workflow steps that take place. Now, you could either have the customer already using Microsoft Office 365, or they may be new. So there's this toggle here that says, is this the first registration with the provider, right? So if they're using Office 365 now, you'd obviously click no. At this point, the system allows you to send an email with the reseller relationship, and you can go ahead and process the transition without actually having to create a new tenant. Now, in the case where you actually need to set up a new tenant, this provisioning account flow helps you go through that, right? Right now, in this scenario, I've clicked that this is the first registration. I've selected a domain which I like to set up in Office 365 for the customer. I continue with the process. I scroll down a little bit, and you notice here there's an option to select the template that the customer is going to sign. Within Work 365, the customer agreement is now a new agreement template. All you do is note when the customer signed that, and as you complete the process, everything gets synced into Partner Center and set up in Work 365. So really what this workflow does for you is take care of all those manual steps in between, where really all you're doing is following that wizard and setting up your subscriptions at the end of it, right? Simplifies the process quite a bit. Now let's say you have a scenario where you're using Work 365 already, or maybe not even using it, but the customer signed the Microsoft Cloud Agreement. Actually, what I'm showing you here is the template. Within Work 365, you have these agreement templates. This is what the customer agreement template could look like. You could obviously define your own agreements here if you wanted to. Right. Now, let's take a look at an example where the customer has signed the Microsoft Cloud Agreement in the past, and you want them to sign the new agreement, or at least track that they've signed the new customer agreement. So I have a customer here in my system called Blue Yonder. They've signed this old Microsoft Cloud Agreement. All I do is click on the new agreement button. I'm prompted with this screen to tell to instruct the system on what that agreement is. I'm giving it a specific name, selecting the template, notating who signed it, when they signed it, and as soon as I complete that process, the agreement will sync back into the partner center. Now I go back to my billing contract. I'm able to find that new agreement that the customer signed and then associate with that billing contract. So now my billing contract is fully compliant. I'm now able to see that they've got the old agreement and the new agreement signed, and I am looking good to be able to sell and transact with this customer, right? So again, if there's questions on this stuff, I'm happy to take them at the end. Thank you very much. Right. Okay, so going back to the initial part of my agenda, one of the things I wanted to talk about today was, the bill with accurate and intuitive invoices, which is one of the tenets around building a successful subscription and recurring revenue practice. What we're calling this is a unified billing. It's a feature that's coming up pretty shortly in the application. So to think about this, what I'd like to do is share a little bit of our approach in terms of how we're doing this. Generally, you're selling products and services. Now, products are going to, I guess the way to think about this is that there's going to be multiple sources of revenue for most software and IT services technology companies. You're selling your own products or your what we call IP, or reselling third-party products like Office 365. And these are all digital products, most often sold on a subscription basis or potentially even as a one-time sale or perpetual item. Then you may have physical devices or hardware that gets sold, right? Now, these items are supported in Work 365 right now through the product catalog integration, using the price lists that are already there, the subscription management capabilities, and also the non-recurring items, right? What we're missing is really the labor and time, right? How do you bill for labor and time on the same invoices? Now, this labor and time essentially is a big component of how a lot of IT services and partners on the call make their revenue, right? And the way we think about this is there's going to be usually 3 types of time billing requirements. You're either doing projects, you might be selling managed services, or doing time and break fix. And maybe hopefully this covers most of the scenarios where you've got an hourly based billing requirement. You may have certain milestone based requirements, or just a fixed fee as well, right? Now, let's take a look at an example of how this is going to work in the system. If you're familiar with the billing contracts in Work 365, you know that you have things like subscription and non-recurring items. There's a new tab here called Services. This is going to allow you to bill for services. We keep clicking over here. Now, a service is going to be a high-level project or subscription level item. This could be a project in PSA. It will have a relationship to a PSA project potentially. For those of you that are using Work 365, think of this as having a time provider, right? We are using automatic providers in some cases and manual providers in some cases. There will be automatic time providers and there may be manual time providers. PSA is most likely going to be an automatic time provider, where you'll be able to pull time out of PSA directly into a billing contract under a service. So what you're seeing here is a high-level project item that's been set up, and then underneath that, you'll be able to do your time logs. Now, this is an example of the actual time log that gets entered into the system. I have some items here. Notice that it's going to be separate line items. If you were doing a manual time entry, you could do this in a manual way as well by entering time directly into the system, right? And then what happens is all this gets calculated, accrued, and assimilated into your recurring invoice. You can see this is an example of that invoice, which includes some products that were sold, just like Work 365 does with all the changes that have taken place in the past. And there's an additional line item for that project, which includes the total time. If there's a combined rate, the rate won't show up. It becomes sort of like a usage invoice. And then the amount that actually gets included is also shown here in this invoice. So this is an example of how the time unified billing and how the time-based billing will work in Work 365 in our upcoming release. I'd just like to do another quick poll to get a sense of how many of us are using different timekeeping applications. If you don't mind just taking it's just a few options here, in fact. Okay. I'm going to be closing the poll out here. That's very interesting. Okay, good. If give it another 10 seconds, actually I have about 60% of the votes in. Okay, I'm going to launch this poll. Looks like we have no ConnectWise users here. Hopefully you can see the results. Looks like about a third are using PSA, and then there are other timekeeping systems also being actively used. All right, it's interesting. All right, now getting to that next topic that I wanted to talk about, which is around measuring customer metrics. Very important with recurring billing and subscription management. So metrics and KPIs are, as I mentioned, going to give us an insight, and they're very important when especially when you're transitioning business models or you're just getting a good overview of what's really going on. They also help us tweak things and create the right outcomes, right? With recurring revenue and subscription-based services, you're going to want to measure KPIs that help you understand your sales, delivery, and financial performance, right? You want to be able to know what are the best products, who are my best customers, actually even who are my best sales team members that are not nuanced. There's a nuance there. It's not just about the revenue. It's about the process and the details around how things are actually working. How are you doing across different product lines? And this is all much easier when you have, when your customer base is a little smaller and the combination of products you're selling is smaller. But it starts to get quite murky and challenging as you start to add more customers and you start to scale, right? So as best practice, what I've done is compiled a bunch of metrics, which I think are important. So here's a quick look at those. What we believe is, on the sales side, you should be tracking monthly recurring revenue, what your annual contract value is, and your average on your annual contract value too. What is the growth you're getting from your new customers? Now, this really is a measure of how your sales team is really doing. As you get into the next swim lane, you see we talk a little bit about your delivery and your service aspects. This determines things like your renewal rates, how many customers are churning out, and then what is the revenue growth you're getting from your existing customers. Obviously, this is also revenue, but it is a function and a reflection of how your services are being delivered, not so much your sales performance. And then finally, your finance team is going to want to, get a handle on things like deferred revenue, how you're doing from a profitability standpoint, and what are the most profitable items and products that you're selling. So margins are very important. Now, obviously, these are a whole bunch of metrics. I'm not going to be able to cover all of them, but just to give you a quick overview of how 365 can help you with this. If you're using the system, you have all the data there. These are some of the reports that are available or can be made available. Actually, here's an example of how you might track your renewal rate across your billing contracts. Right, what we're seeing is, in this case, there's a 65% renewal rate. We've had some customers at the start of a period. We've had some customers that we've lost, some billing relationships that we've lost, some customers that were there at the conclusion of that billing period, and then new ones that were added through that billing period. All this math then leads to a renewal rate that you can actually get a sense of in terms of how you're really doing. You could even filter by a specific owner, and that owner, you might be able to say, hey, listen, how's Bob's renewal rate, right? And know what's happening to the customers that a specific salesperson is bringing in. Here's an example of how the renewal rate would work on the revenue side. So now this is independent of the billing contract relationship, but really tracking your overall revenue. Because all the subscription data contains revenue information, we're able to see that within the system and all the things that are happening between sales and support, you may have churned out some subscriptions and added new ones. That may still be a positive thing because you may have dropped lower value services and added higher value services. So another way to kind of think about your business, and it's very important to be able to do this and track this as well. Another really difficult thing to do sometimes is, seeing your revenue ladder, revenue step ladder, right? You should be able to know how you're doing month over month, building that monthly recurring revenue, how you're doing with that annual recurring revenue, and what is the contribution from the different services and products that you're selling to that revenue chart, right? Okay, now I think that's most of what I had to talk about. We're open to questions. I'd like to address some of the questions that we kind of get asked quite a bit during these presentations. So the webinar will be available on our YouTube channel, on our Yammer group as well. Work 365 is available in every country where Dynamics is supported. And it can be used for indirect and direct billers with one or more partner centers in any country. We support multiple currencies. And we actually now, I'm excited to say, we have language support in the application too. So customer-facing content like the self-service portal can be localized and translated into the choice of language that you like for your end customers. And one more thing I want to mention is, if you are considering starting your onboarding with Work 365, this is not a bad time to do it. Onboarding is usually a 30-day trial. However, if you sign up this month in December, you get January as well for free, and you can stay in your trial, and your billing will only start in February. So that's a plug for you to start the trial if you're kind of thinking about when to do it. And with that, I want to wish everyone happy holidays, lots of luck closing out 2019, and best wishes for 2020. And actually also swallowing the fish, right? If you're in the process of doing that transformation, good luck with that. We're all I know we're doing that. We're swallowing the fish, not swallowing yet, but eating the fish maybe. All right, I'll open it up to questions. So please let me know if there's anything we can address. No questions right now. We'll give it another 3-4 minutes, well, maybe a minute or two. If there's no questions, we'll wrap up. Don't see any questions coming in.